Welcome into Cougar Tracks here on the KSL Sports YouTube. I am your BYU insider, Mitch Harper, for KSL Sports. It's Monday, August 24th. We're 12 days away until BYU football kicks off the 2026 season. Cannot wait. The good news is we don't have to wait too much longer for college football to return. We've got FCS action this Thursday, and then, of course, week 0 of the FBS season coming up this Saturday. Cannot wait. College football is finally here. BYU football fall camp winding down. And when Cougar fans go to LES this season, there'll be some new looks around the facility. That's our top story of the day.
The top story of the day. The biggest story in the world of BYU sports right here on Cougar Tracks.
New stadium upgrades at LaVell Edwards Stadium beginning this year, and it's a 2-year process. There'll be a new upgrade in 2027. So BYU announced these new stadium upgrades coming to LaVell Edwards Stadium, which, when you think about it, has been in operation since the 1960s. It's an older stadium. There's good bones to the stadium, but there's got to be some upgrades. There's a new recruit lounge, PAX Recruit Lounge, which BYU notes, located under the east stands. A newly constructed recruiting lounge will serve as a central hub for recruits and their families visiting LaVell Edwards Stadium for a BYU football game. The lounge will feature new seating, food and beverage options, and entertainment areas. It's sponsored by PAX. That was much needed because the recruiting area before was in that same spot, but it was just basically balloons and streamers, and you're just like, it's very hollow and cold, and when there's rain in the forecast at a game, you got drips from the bleachers up above. It wasn't a great space. So now they've got a designated spot for the recruits. So that's a welcome addition. Also welcome addition is the new home locker room upgrade at LaVell Edwards Stadium. That's been upgraded. Fresh new lockers, for the team. White with royal blue padded seats. Out is the old wooden lockers. That's gone, thing of the past, and they got a new upgraded look in there. They rolled that out, had it ready for the first scrimmage. We talked with Reggie Frischnecht on Cougar Sports Saturday a little bit about that, asking him his thoughts of the new locker room, but welcomed addition for BYU. They note in the release from BYU, the BYU home locker room at LaVell Edwards Stadium was renovated this offseason, providing the team with upgraded features and resources. Interesting wording there, including new lockers, technology, player amenities, and other improvements. The day-to-day football locker room in the student-athlete building was renovated in 2021. The visitors' locker room at LES was upgraded prior to the 2024 season. So a much-needed upgrade there for BYU's locker room at LES. Other upgrades at the stadium include things that'll probably be more corporate sponsor related. That's the one thing that stands out about these upgrades. It's not really for the common fan who's just getting tickets. These are all kind of corporate sponsor deals or players and recruits that are going to enjoy these amenities. Doesn't change the capacity of the stadium, but it's not really for the fan who's spending money on their season tickets and donating to the Cougar Club. It's not really for them, and I'll get my thoughts on that here shortly. But LaVell's Lounge, which is going to be on the northwest side, LaVell's Lounge will provide a new hospitality and hosting space just off the upper course platform between the west and north stands, under the west stands. The space is sponsored by Qualtrics and replaces Gridiron Grill and will provide an updated setting for BYU Athletics guests and corporate partners. LaVell's Lounge will feature an expanded concessions menu with new seating, TVs, decor, and other amenities. And then coming up in 2027, the Northwest Platform Future PAX Pavilion will be inside LaVell Edwards Stadium, and that's what this looks like right here. The PAX Premium Club, which the design, I think people have kind of poked at on social media. It is what it is. I think what kind of stands out to me on this is I've seen the reactions on social media from fans and things like that, but my instant thought was this really doesn't benefit the fan that's buying season tickets for their family or just for them and maybe a kid or two or their spouse. Doesn't really benefit that person. It's more corporate sponsors or the team. But I got thinking about him, like, for a coach, Kalani Sitake, who said just a couple weeks ago at the golf media event, he's been tasked with doing the most with the least. This feels a little bit like excess in the corporate sponsor space, maybe. But then you see like the Facebook comments from fans and they're like, this is big boy football. This is the price of doing big boy football. I agree. And I wholeheartedly agree with that messaging. But is that aligning with the football program where the head coach is saying they're being tasked with doing the most with the least? There seems like a little bit of a disconnect. Now, I think internally BYU would tell you there's unprecedented resources going to this football program. And I've seen it every step of the way since the moment they were invited to the Big 12 in 2021 to now. There has been a significant jump. And I think this is another case of that. You wonder, too, where all this money will go. You assume that it would just go back to the players. I think that would be something that they should just like disclose, say, hey, these corporate sponsor spaces, all of this money will go back to the rosters in future years. I think that would be a great selling point to get even more businesses and companies to sign up for it, because ultimately I think people want the best possible rosters playing out every single year in this BYU football program and retaining the rosters as well. The PAX Pavilion in the 2027 season, which is coming there in that northwest corner, that's still under construction right now. I think it's fine. I mean, I think it'll be okay. It's just, it kind of diminishes the ability, you would think, to then close the stadium. And back in the day, Tom Holmoe, BYU AD, always said that closing the stadium, those would be the worst seats. They'll never turn it into a bowl. And that's kind of a non-starter. I have always been of the thought that you don't really need to expand beyond 63, 64K. I think for fans that are like, let's get it up to 70, 75K, I don't think that's the move, honestly. I mean, I saw the independent years where it was never really sold out, ever. You go back a couple of years ago, some of these crowds, even last year, some of the crowds were the biggest in 16, 17 years. So there had been a long gap. Like right now, it feels like, oh my gosh, there's not enough product being pushed out there. But I remember a time when BYU's going independent, Utah's going to the Pac-12, people were buying more Utah tickets than BYU tickets. So it's not far removed from my mind that was once a thing. I think BYU's capacity number is perfect. I just think they need to have more amenities for the fan, plus corporate sponsors, which these are great. I think they got to renovate the press box. I think that West grandstand, to me, is got to be an area of focus. The East sideline, I think, is in a good place. I think that's pretty good. The mezzanine was a very underrated addition for the fans. I think back in 2019, I think that's been really good to really connect the whole thing, the second level of the stadium. East stands has got renovated bathrooms. I think that's a good spot. But the West really needs to get a facelift. The West grandstand, the press box on the West stand. Now, the press box is good. I think it's one of the better ones, honestly, that I've seen in my travels in college football in the Big 12. The windows are very good. There's not obstructed views. It's really a good space. But I think that's kind of the area I look at and say that can get upgraded somehow, some way, if you're thinking long-term of what BYU needs to do with the facility. But scoreboards are great. I think the lighting is much improved. They got that upgraded a couple years ago. They've been quietly, slowly, but surely building things up. We'll continue to see more with this LaVell Edwards Stadium renovation, but some nice upgrades for corporate sponsors and the BYU football team, that home locker room was much needed. I mean, those wooden locker rooms have been there forever. They needed to get those upgraded, and now they've got that updated heading into the 2026 season. Let's take a break. More Cougar Tracks on the other side here on the KSL Sports YouTube page. Cougar Tracks rolls on here on the KSL Sports YouTube every day, talking BYU sports here on Cougar Tracks. Give a thumbs up to this video, subscribe to the KSL Sports YouTube channel, and also subscribe to the audio feed of this podcast. Wherever you get your podcast, leave a 5-star rating and a review. It would be greatly appreciated. So Brett McMurphy, he's kind of the czar of bowl games. He's all about the postseason of college football. He's so in tune with bowl season and projections. I think it was noteworthy here when he put out his week 0 preseason bowl projections and playoff projections. And the question, I think, for a lot of Cougar fans, after 2 years where BYU is knocking on the doorstep of the college football playoff, will they break through and make it this year? I was talking about this with Nate Slack on Cougar Sports Saturday over the weekend. BYU is the only program in the 16-team Big 12 that has never been to a BCS Bowl, a New Year's Six Bowl, or a college football playoff appearance. All the other 15 teams in this league have at least been to one of those things, like at one point. Even Colorado, who's been a mess really in the BCS era, even in 2001, they had an appearance in the Fiesta Bowl. BYU has not cracked through. And we could go on a long rant as to why that is. Access being a big thing in that, 28 years or so. Still, they have not been at the biggest stages of the sport in the era of determining a national champion in this sport. BCS, 4-team playoff, 12-team playoff. BYU has not been in the major bowls. Will this be the year? Will they get to the college football playoff? And I thought it was noteworthy, Brett McMurphy, who's sometimes kind of low on BYU, he's got the Cougars making the college football playoff. McMurphy has BYU earning a 10 seed and playing in the first round against reigning national champion Indiana, the 7 seed in Bloomington, Indiana. Sign me up. That would be awesome. I went to Bloomington in the COVID year, 2020 to 2021. I was covering the NCAA tournament in the bubble in Indianapolis, covering BYU and Utah State. And I had the chance to go to Assembly Hall in Bloomington and kind of see the town. And again, that was COVID. So it was a shell of what it probably is on a basketball or football game day. But the town was really cool. It was a true college town. And I thought it was awesome, Bloomington. And seeing Assembly Hall and then seeing the football stadium, which at the time I thought, man, these fans, it's a rough existence being an Indiana football fan. They go to this stadium in the fall and they're never winning anything. And then fast forward 4 years later and they're winning the whole dang thing. Pretty amazing stuff. But I would take that in a heartbeat. Just get into the playoff. Even if you're on the road, like I'm not expecting BYU to get a home game. Unless they run the table and win the Big 12, then they should absolutely be a top 4 seed and probably have a bye to the quarterfinals. But you got a first-round game, 10 seed on the road against Indiana, sign me up. I'm in. I'm in for that. I would love that. Be a tough game, but I'd love it. The winner in McMurphy's bracket would funnel into a game in the Fiesta Bowl against 2-seed Oregon in the quarterfinals. And then the semifinals would be the Orange Bowl and then the national championship in Las Vegas, January 25th, 2027. Look, let your mind just wander for a little bit. Think about that for a second. The national championship is in Vegas, and there is a long road to go. Again, I'm not saying BYU is going to the national championship. I think it's going to be tough just to get into this 12-team field. But if there was ever a year where the stars aligned, imagine BYU playing in Vegas for a national title. BYU fans would do whatever necessary to fill that place up. They would do, I can't even imagine what that turnout would look like. The demand for tickets would just be absolutely insane. January 25th, 2027. But McMurphy's got the Cougs heading into week 0 in his way too early college football playoff bracket. I thought that was pretty cool to see. It's also pretty cool to see BYU football having success once again at the tight end position. Last year, they produced an NFL draft pick in Carson Ryan, who's with the Cleveland Browns as a 7th-round pick. Now BYU looks to take it to an even higher level with Walker Lyons, Roger Saliapaga in this tight end unit. And the man that assembled this tight end group is Kevin Gilbride, heading into his 3rd season with the BYU football program, a former BYU quarterback back in the day as a player. He spent a lot of time as a coach in the NFL before finding his way back to Provo. And I started the conversation by asking Coach Gilbride if he sees in his experience now with a couple years under his belt in the college ranks, some intersection of life in the NFL and how being a college football coach is like. And here's Coach Gilbride.
There's definitely some intersection as far as roster building and all that stuff. But what is a little bit different is in college, the coaches have a lot more influence on who the players are. In the NFL, for the most part, you have your influence, you write your reports, you do your research. But when push comes to shove, it's the general managers and the head coaches and ownership who makes the decisions on who's in your room. In college, we recruit them, so our position coaches have a lot more influence. As far as the football itself, there's definitely a lot of crossover. Football is football, in my opinion. But we, including our offense, you're seeing a lot more offenses that are adapting their ways to how the NFL is leading the charge. And what I mean by that is some 12 personnel, some 13 personnel to try to put some strain and stress on the defense as far as their play calls and how they're lining up the different things that you can do in those personnel groups.
And I'm curious, with you coming from a football family, does your dad ever kind of weigh in on what you guys are doing here at BYU, or maybe come out here to practice or camp at all and see how BYU's doing things?
He doesn't weigh in, but more, it's not like a criticism ever. Sure. It's more like a, hey, what were you guys trying to get done there? Or that was awesome how you guys attacked, the flat defender, or whatever the case may be. He's usually now more of an appreciator than he is an influencer or someone who's going to judge.
When you were a player, did you always know in the back of your mind you wanted to be a coach? Like, when was the first moment you really said, I want to pursue the path of coaching?
That's a funny question, because when I was young, I thought as soon as I'm done playing in the NFL, MLB, and NBA, I'll be a coach, because my dad was a coach. And then it got to the point where I was very unsure what I wanted to do. But then, and this is during college, and then when I started reflecting on what do I truly have passion for, it was the coaches that made such a great influence, and had such a great influence on my life, that I was like, you know what, that's what I want to do. I want to help develop young men to be the best people they can be and best players they can be. So it's college.
and how rewarding has it been? Because look at the tight end room you got this year. You had to recruit, probably get some heated battles to get these guys assembled, but your thoughts on this group and the trying to develop these guys into the best they could be?
Well, I'm very happy, number one, to be able to have not just the quality of player, but quality of person in that room. It's a special group in that regard. It's up to me and them to get them to be the best players that they can be. And to me, it's still an unfinished product. So I'm excited about it, but we still have work to do. But if we continue to progress the way that we have thus far, we're going to be very special from a talent standpoint, from a production standpoint, as a football player, as well as being the great people that they are off the field.
Is Walker Lyons maybe more athletic than maybe he gets credit for?
I think he is, actually. He's sneaky athletic, and part of that is he's really starting to move efficiently. There's not much false movement, and that really is going to help you to be able to be quicker and more agile. But then on the other side, because he's working hard at it, number one. But then on the other side of things, just from a talent standpoint, I think he's got a little bit more in the tank than people give him credit for.
Yeah, and Bear last year, Bear Bachmeyer said that Carson Ryan was his safety blanket. Do you envision, at least hope that can be the case here for maybe the chemistry is being developed between Walker and Bear and Roger Saliapaga as well?
That's exactly right, and that's something that the quarterbacks need, number one, is they need to have somebody in a tight end / two tight ends that they can truly trust, and they know exactly where they're going to be every time. And so that is what is being developed right now. It's not there quite yet, but it's getting there. And as long as we continue to just work at it and don't get frustrated and continue to make progress, we're going to be on the same page with the quarterbacks, and we need to be, but we need to continue to take those steps.
How valuable was it last year to have maybe a proof of concept and I know that he didn't get drafted when you were going through portal recruiting with Walker and Roger, but to have someone who was super productive like Carson Ryan last year, 600 receiving yards, to say to these guys, hey, you could do this potentially in this offense and try to do it at a higher level?
It's incredibly influential, but it wasn't necessarily me or Coach Tyson, my assistant tight end coach, or Coach Al selling it. It was them having conversations with Carson, and it wasn't just what we can do in this offense, but hey, how are these coaches? How is the culture of the team? And it was Carson Ryan selling them on it. So I feel very blessed to have had the opportunity to coach Carson and watch him progress and continue to get better and better and better, and now getting better in the pros too, and then very fortunate to have him influence these guys.
With Roger, with someone like him who, yes, he was a heralded recruit out of high school, but maybe just little production, I guess, at the college level, what do you do as an evaluator to forecast? Is it measurements? Is it how he fits maybe in a particular scheme? Like, what do you do when someone maybe has little film at the college level to project as a transfer?
I think you evaluate the little film that they have, and that includes special teams film, includes all the different, anything you get your hands on. Then you evaluate how they were in high school, and then basically compare them to high school players right now that you would potentially be recruiting, and then get to know them as a kid. It's got to be, especially at BYU, it has to be the right fit as far as a person's concerned. In our room, I need to have guys that want to be pushed, that want to be the best player they can be, and that will just take steps, follow their process every single day, and that's what we found in Roger. So it wasn't that hard to get the true evaluation, because once you get to know the kid, like, he's a special kid.
Yeah, talking with him, he takes pride too in the fact that he feels like he's evolving as a blocker. Do you see that showing up from him, and maybe other areas that you feel like he's evolving in camp?
He's certainly evolving and getting better as a blocker, but I felt like he was a decent blocker in college and at Oregon. But he's getting better, and where we're working on with him is finishing. And that's, to me, that's going to be a huge factor, a huge contributor in the results of our run game, because it's not always going to be block perfect. But if we finish and we can stay engaged with these defenders, Bear Bachmeyer, Sione Moa, and LJ Martin will run through arm tackles, and makes huge production. Rather than being a 4 to 5 yard gain, it becomes a 12 to 15 yard gain.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about a few other guys here with Coach Gilbride. Noah Moeaki, I think people forget, like, he was the guy that, he had a touchdown grab early in the season last year, and can be a factor, and he's coming. He's been a veteran in this program. Where you see maybe growth from Noah Moeaki and Kean Need as well, who played a lot of snaps last season?
Kean, it's definitely his knowledge of the offense, and that just doesn't mean the X's and O's of it. It's how to execute your job based on play and based on rule. For Noah, he continues to just become a master of the craft of knowing how to execute a job, and he's just getting better and better in that area. Right now, he's been dinged up, so he's not taking those steps, but he's a very bright young man, and I trust him, and our rest of our coaching staff trusts him to put him in at any position, and he's going to be able to know how to execute the job and do it to the best of his ability.
That's BYU tight ends coach Kevin Gilbride here on Cougar Tracks, and he noted in my conversation with him that he feels there's about 6 tight ends in his room that he could trust in a game. So you think about Walker Lyons, Roger Saliapaga, Moeaki when he's healthy, Kean Need, Will Zundel, and then that 6th guy, you could go a lot of different directions, maybe Ethan Wood, Jacob Nye, somewhere in there. But BYU's tight end room, much deeper than it's been. I think the deepest it's been since they joined the Big 12 Conference, and maybe the deepest in the Kalani Sitake era. It's a strong room for the Cougars, and it's going to be a big weapon for this team. I'm curious to see how the role of Roger Saliapaga continues to evolve. I mean, could he be like a wide receiver in some respects for this team? How he could line up out wide, he could be an inline tight end. He can do a lot in this offense, and I think Walker Lyons is the complete package at the tight end spot, and Saliapaga is not far off as well. Let's take our final break. On the other side, we'll continue to talk more Cougar football as fall camp starts to wind down right here on Cougar Tracks. Final week of BYU football fall camp. Cougars are winding down as they continue the countdown to the season opener against the Utah Tech Trailblazers. 6 o'clock kick on Saturday, September 5th on KSL News Radio and ESPN Plus. So you got to get your streaming lined up to take care of that so you can watch the game, or you're going to be in the stadium. Radio coverage begins at noon on the legacy home of the Cougars. And as camp winds down on the heels of a practice observation and scrimmage number 2 over the weekend, it's time for the Cougar Stock Exchange.
The Cougar Stock Exchange. What's trending up and what's trending down? It's the Cougar Stock Exchange.
Cougar Stock Exchange, we got the chance to see some practice on Friday. We watched practice on Friday, and then the football team had a scrimmage inside LES on Saturday. Scrimmage number 2, again, as camp starts to wind down for this BYU football team. During the Friday practice observation, I thought there was some good tidbits to take away. Some of the backup reserve guys, I think, really stood out in this observation period. Terrence Sarion, as you see right there, I thought Terrence Sarion looked really good in the observation period of practice, where Trayson Bourget had a deep pass to Sarion. He also closed it out with a touchdown grab as well. So he, I think, is trending up. Now, I wouldn't put him in maybe that top 5. Maybe he's in that next grouping. But I think it points to when Fesi Sitake says that he feels this is the most skilled wide receiver room in terms of numbers and depth. I think you see that with a Terrence Sarion, who could be wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7, and plays like that are showing up. BYU, when Fesi first arrived in 2018, I can assure you wide receiver 6 wasn't making plays like that. So Terrence Sarion, the true freshman, making a name for himself. Also, I think Tay Nakua having some nice moments in camp as of late. Nakua had 2 grabs during the practice observation period on Friday. They were back-to-back grabs. And then he was spotlighted by Trayson Bourget in the fall camp scrimmage as the offensive player of the scrimmage. And the scrimmage, of course, was focusing primarily on the 2s and 3s. The first team, it was light work. Don't worry on those guys. Continue to develop and give snaps to guys that aren't going to play as much. But again, Tay Nakua showing some signs and making a little bit of a late push before the season starts. Kendall Wall trending up. He's an outside linebacker, former defensive tackle from Mountain Ridge High School. Like, when he signed with BYU in the class of 2025, he was one of my guys to watch for as a freshman. Didn't really materialize last year. One, because I think he was playing out of position. I thought him at defensive tackle just never computed in my brain. Like, he was a defensive end, and like, I know sometimes you look at body types and you project out and say, throw some weight on this guy, he's going to be an absolute stud. It didn't seem like his body and the way that he played. Like, this guy's a pass rusher. This guy gets off the edge. He's a good athlete. I think a bold take here with Kendall Wall. I think Kendall Wall, if he continues to develop, he's at this outside linebacker spot, which is in a linebacker room that Kalani Sitake says maybe been the best he's ever been around in his coaching career. He said that on Friday. Kendall Wall, who I talked to Chad Kauhahaha about, they like him at that outside linebacker, but I think he could maybe be the next Isaiah Glasker in the program. Think about an under-the-radar, in-state guy, takes a couple years to develop, and then he hits it big as an outside backer. I mean, and Glasker's kind of that inside backer now. He can do a lot of different spots, things in that linebacker unit. But Kendall Wall, remember the name on him. I think he's surging in fall camp practices. Also, Cannon DeVries, another in-state prospect, Weber High, keep an eye out for him at the nickel position. Jonathan Cabella continues to rehab, which has been something we've talked about throughout camp, going back to the media day fall camp golf event in July with Lewis Walker. With Cabella still rehabbing, you got Tommy Parasis at that nickel spot, but what about Cannon DeVries, who's got experience as a corner? He's switched back over to safety. I think Cannon DeVries, it wouldn't shock me if we saw him have a lot of snaps this season, maybe at nickel. And then I think maybe the biggest trending up in camp over the last week or so, Kyler Casper. You kind of wonder if maybe he might be wide receiver 1. Again, I'm still in prove it in the game mode, and I think that's fair to expect, but athleticism has really shown up. He looks the part. He looks good. I mean, Kyler Casper might be the guy for BYU, potentially. JoJo Phillips has been the assumed guy, but I think in terms of big plays, Legend Glasgow and Kyler Casper seem to be the ones making more big highlight-worthy plays. We'll see on Kyler Casper, but he's definitely trending up. Trending down, I'll say the idea of Paki Finau opening the season at guard. And again, going into the year, you looked at Siwa Latu Finau. He's the next in line. He's going to be the next one at left tackle. And maybe in 2027, we're talking about him at that spot. But I think for right now, in 2026, with how experienced and veteran this team is, I think you got to go with Paki Finau at the left tackle position, and he'll be really good at that spot. He anchored that spot in spring practices, and he's primarily been there throughout fall camp and had some first-team snaps with the guard position during fall. But Paki Finau, he's probably your opening week left tackle. But I think, again, Siwa Latu Finau, Sia Ua Latu Finau, is one to monitor how he continues to progress over the course of the season. Some other practice notes from Friday. Tausili Akana, he beat out Andrew Gentry and got a sack on Bear Bachmeier. Again, no contact, but it was whistled a sack. Trevin Osler, he's been recovering a little bit from getting a little bit nicks and bruises in camp. Saw him back on the field on Friday, earned some first-team snaps at left guard, so that was good to see. Osler, again, switching over back to the offensive line after experimenting at the beef package in the tight end spot. Osler, I think, will be in that, top 7 or 8 for TJ Woods on that offensive line. And he's someone that often gets forgotten, but a really good athlete at his size. Osler will be one to keep tabs on this season. Haven't seen much yet from Jaron Poole. We talked a lot about Kyler Casper is maybe emerging as the standout at wide receiver coming out of fall camp. Haven't seen as much yet from Jaron Poole. Legend Glasker's been a home run guy as a true freshman. Maybe it's a little bit more of a slow build with Jaron Poole this season. And then Raider DeMooney, he had an interception grab on Bear Bachmeier on Friday. Raider, I think, is going to have a really good year for BYU football this year. And of note, too, BYU put out a clip of Falatau Satuala on Saturday's scrimmage number 2, padded up, all in his gear. We hadn't seen that yet this fall camp during media observation portions of Falatau Satuala, who continues to recover from a right foot injury. So I think that's something to kind of store away. And look, coaches have been saying all along, Kalani and Kelly Papinga, he will be playing week 1 against Utah Tech, and he'll be ready to roll as he continues to recover from that right foot injury. But that's the news and notes on the stock exchange with the latest from fall camp. They'll start to wind things down midweek this week and then pivot to game prep for Utah Tech in week 1 on Saturday, September 5th. I wanted to hit on this before we get out for today's Monday edition of the program. A lot of talk around college football and football in general right now about the Browns waiving a player, Daquan Wright, former Ole Miss player, who's now expected to go back to LSU. And people are just befuddled and floored that this is possibly happening. Am I off in thinking that this is okay because it's an isolated deal? Now, does it open the floodgates for guys in the NFL to to leave and go back to college? I don't think so, because again, once you have an NFL spot, you're not leaving the pros for college. You're not coming back. This was a guy in Daquan Wright who played no snaps in 2 preseason games. He's getting cut. When he made the decision to go into the NFL, his eligibility was expired, and at no point did the NCAA say that the 5th year was going to be given to these individuals. Had the NCAA just said, you know what, let's grant this to everyone because they knew that 5-5 was coming, why not grant it to the class of 2022? Well, these guys like Daquan Wright go to the courts. Now the lay of the law says he can come back to college, and he's got it lined up to where he can go back to LSU. I don't find it crazy. And I don't think it's so mind-blowing when a guy that probably would have come back to college had he known he had a 5th year in front of him. He didn't have that option in front of him. And now that you've given 5 years to everyone, why class of 2023? Why not class of 2022? I think it was Bud Elliott with CBS Sports who kind of had a conspiracy theory, but I buy into it. That he said that he sees the NCAA trying to block these 2022 guys to create all this chaos and all this noise. So it gets to the Senate and they're like, you've got to pass this Protect College Sports Act, because you see a headline says NFL player goes back to college. That's jarring. But when you kind of get deep into the weeds here of this is not like Zach Wilson, former BYU quarterback, who in theory had 1 year left of college eligibility after 5 years of the NFL life coming back to college football. It's not that. This is a guy that was just recently in college, didn't play any snaps in preseason games, and he's been granted by the lay of the law to get a 5th year like everyone else in college football right now. Why not give him a 5th year? Because he probably would have stayed in college to begin with back in January had he known that he had an extra year available to him. But this type of headlines maybe creates the shock and awe that maybe pushes across the finish line Protect College Sports when they revisit it in September. But I think it's fine. I think, honestly, if I was BYU, I'd be looking at the waiver wire of some of these guys. Like, if I was a player personnel director, you betcha I'd be hitting the pavement trying to get these NFL training camp guys that get cut and never played in an NFL regular season game. You betcha I'd be adding these guys if I could. If I had roster space, I'd be making it happen. I'd be getting aggressive after it. I mean, I look at someone like a Jaden Ott, who BYU once recruited out of high school, comes from the same high school as Blake Wong, Norco High. He had it down to BYU and Cal out of high school, was an outstanding player at Cal, went to Oklahoma last year, didn't really materialize much. Now he's with the Chiefs. I don't think he's done much. I don't know if he's going to make that team. I'd add him. If I was the player personnel guy, that'd be my direction. I'd go get a wide receiver too, just to sharpen iron. And if you say, oh, well, that's just poor form, well, this is the business. This is now basically, I don't want to say professional sports because there's still got to be a college football element, but it's like when you get money involved, everyone's getting money. Everyone's getting a cut, and they're going to try to protect their cut. They want the good of the whole, the culture, but I think if I'm LSU, I don't blame them. I don't blame Lane Kiffin. I think it's a great move. I think it's fine. Again, I don't expect this to continue on and on. I think it's an isolated deal that's this one weird cycle, and then once guys move on, they're done. I don't think we're going to see this anymore. I'd be surprised if that happened anymore, because all these guys want to stay in the NFL. They want to stay in the NBA. They're coming back because there's these kind of isolated deals to allow them to come back, and why not? I'm here for it. That's going to do it for this edition of Cougar Tracks. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll talk to you next time here on Cougar Tracks, and it's powered by KSL Sports.